don't do this shit. And why I tell me that? Because when people have been in bondage, yeah, from the Sea Islands, from Jacksonville, North Carolina, to Jacksonville, Florida. When they first teeth the Igbo, Mandinka, Malenke, Yoruba, Gullah, Geechee, Mendi, Temni, Fiki, Bibio. Their children, they know how to read and write. They would do them in their own language. And then when they get along with the background with the country from Europe and thing, they understand their language, Elizabethan English. When they get around the Spanish people down in La Florida, then they learn things like como estas. If they had to be around the French like those of our ancestors enslaved in New Orleans, they would say, je parle français. But they always added it in the same way we do it, a good pot. They always added in everything they had and flavored it their own way. And so this day, we can celebrate that our ancestors produced out of their pot, where all of them were brought in together, Gullah, the language, the traditions, the culture, and the people. And the word Gullah itself means people blessed by God. People blessed by God ain't got no business with their head hanging down. And our ancestors, the Gullah, G-O-L-A, the Geechee, G-I-D-Z-I, are from which our names came that you see now on our national flag that says, we be Gullah Geechee anointed people. They have an island called Gullah Island in the Windward Coast, Rice Coast region of West Africa. And there, when the people talk, people tease them too when they still cracking teeth like this. Got all kind of other name for the language, Creole, and things like that. Got other name in South America, so strong, and people tease them up and call it taki-taki, and things like that. But look what God do. God threw the children around the world with the same tongue so that when they can come together anyway, they can understand one another. You ain't care what other people who don't understand the whole time. Understand what God gives. So it's almost the reverse of the Tower of Babel for people who speak our language, that linguists call it Creole. Because wherever we go, we connect. And we hold our heads up. We look in each other's eyes. And we can see it's the same souls. But during chattel enslavement, when folks found out that we not only spoke through those words, we spoke through those songs, then we spoke through this sound. They said, we got to take this from them. It became illegal in 1739 for Africans to play the drum. Any of y'all got any idea why? Yes, ma'am.
Because they used them, the slaves used it to send messages back and forth to each other about meetings and stuff.
Now, if I had her in my class, she would get a B for that answer. And you know why she would get a B? Because of one word she used, slaves. Enslaved Africans. Yes. And I know why you said it. Because for years, that's what we've been taught. They were slaves. They were slaves. No, the people were enslaved. Because when you have a slave, you strip them of their humanity, of their culture, of their intellect, of their spirituality. It means they're nothing more than an item. But when you talk about people, doesn't it make you say, well, what kind of people? Where are the people from? What are their names? But when we say slave, we strip people of that. So enslaved Africans, yes, as she said, communicated with the drum. They passed messages through the drum. The same way there were messages in the songs with the words. And even if the words sounded like English to English speakers, the meanings had been changed to Gullah speakers. And when we use the word gallon, thing be fresh. I ain't going back on the store's house because that thing been too fresh the other evening. They give me no foot, so they were fresh down. Gullah Geechee, y'all know what that means. What happened? Thank you. No seasoning at all. Wearing to somebody else, that's brand new. or to the kids. That's great,
Right.
right? So in languages, you translate concepts and ideas. You don't translate words verbatim. But our ancestors knew how to code switch so they could transfer and transmit the concept of freedom and the idea, and that was encoded in the messages in the drum they found. And in 1739 specifically, the drum became banned because of the Stono Rebellion. The Stono River, which is north of us heading toward Charleston, picks up around where we would get to a town we call today Ravenel, Hollywood Ravenel area. There was an African man from Angola, and that is how Gullah first came into use. Angolans were the first of our ancestors brought to these islands after those from Barbados were brought into Charlestown. But direct from the continent, Angolans were brought in because of their blacksmithing skill. And when they were sold on auction blocks, they would say, we have a cargo of Gullahs to be sold today. Because that meant the highest quality of Africans were being sold. But what they soon found was that Angolans were always in the leadership of every uprising. And in 1739, it was no different. Because remember, I said, who was in Florida? The Spanish. And what was called the Carolinas, or Carolina, North and South hadn't split yet. It was Carolina. Georgia was a buffer zone, wasn't a state, okay? And so it became this zone where a lot of raiding and fighting between these factions that wanted to stake claim and say North America was theirs, that they would battle. So the Spanish king said, if any Negroes shall escape Carolina and make it to La Florida and convert to Catholicism, they shall be manumist. Manumist is what? Freed and given arms and land. And many of the people would then live at Gracia Real de Santa Teresa de Mose, or Fort Mose, which is part of St. Augustine today. And many of us fought until that fort got acknowledged in that way. And so now, here it is that Jimmy, or Cato, who is an Angolan, who is in bondage on John's Island, hears this. He begins to let the other Angolans know. They begin to gather together. And as they gather together, they put together a plan. From that plan, they knew they could go and make their drums again. They could make arms because they were blacksmiths. Blacksmiths work in what? In irons or metals, iron ore, metals, so they can create anything they need to. So they made these weapons and they began to march with banners saying, Liberty, Liberty, Liberty. And they marched off island onto what is now what we would say Highway 17. They marched onto that highway. They went to what is now Hutchinson Store. If you all come to go into Charleston and be on your left, coming back on your right, and you see where it says Farmers Co-op. That is a Gullah Geechee owned property. There's a marker there to the Stono Rebellion now, because Hutchinson Store stood at that site. They broke in there because they knew there was guns and gunpowder there. And they were determined that they were going to make it from Carolina to Gracia Real de Santa Teresa de Mose. But because of those drums playing, because of them marching, because of them standing for what was really their human right, their freedom, when some got caught, it wasn't enough. The slave codes came into existence. So it became illegal for Africans to play the drum. It became illegal for Africans to read or write. It became illegal for Africans to own land. And it became illegal for 3 or more Africans to gather in one place together without an overseer present. So the 1740 slave codes evolved into the Jim Crow laws later. And many of those Jim Crow laws in South Carolina that were put into practice in Charleston was to keep your eyes bowed if you are of African descent and a person of Anglo descent spoke to you. So much so that some people still do it and could never tell you why. But here is the link from then to now, that the stories never are forgotten as long as they live within us. So remember what I said, freedom is a, what? Y'all don't even remember, so y'all can't do it. Freedom is a right, and freedom is a choice. But gather together with some people who really want to learn about freedom and why it's so important to celebrate the harmonies of songs and power and energies of people that came together to bring about a culture that the world now celebrates, which is Gullah Geechee culture and traditions and language. Even after generations of us being told that we would never get anywhere in life speaking our own language. Because many people who can't speak our language didn't appreciate it, didn't respect it, wanted to minimize it, wanted to limit it. And in films today, we're often limited still. How many films this month will you see where people in the South don't have shoes on their feet? Now, I always come out like that on stages because I don't want nobody to pass out, not thinking that I'm not an authentic Gullah Geechee. I bring out the shoes later after they are comfortable, knowing I am one. But the reality is that on St. Helena Island, shoe lasting was taught during the Civil War, Reconstruction, and thereafter into the 1940s. Oh, y'all ain't had no that. Y'all like, wow, I ain't been know that. Yeah, we should have do that now. Any shoe would be cheaper for we. We make them at home. So when I say to people, why in the world would my people make shoes for everybody else and none keep none for we foot? What kind of cracky thing that would be? But when people don't know and they don't ask anybody, one person tells the lie and the next person copies the lie and the lie keeps going on and eventually the lie becomes the truth. So in films about the South in relation to Black history, more often than not, people are barefoot. And it's not that people didn't go barefoot at times that they chose to, but it wasn't always the case in every situation. They wasn't going praise meeting barefoot. They wasn't going coming here to town, walking across this concrete. Well, back there ain't been so much of concrete as much as it been cobblestone and Oster Shell Road and all them kind of things. You figure you want to walk on all that all day and you might come down for get shoe for your family. You might come have a good sack of cornmeal and things for back grits and all that, and you come in without your shoe? Or you will strap on some boots. Even if it's a bottom pair boot, you gonna chuck your foot in there because you know you got to walk ahead of you. And many of our people off the island, anybody from Hilton Head, y'all are not the island. The island is St. Helena. Anybody off the island, as natives have always called it, all right, when they came here to this campus, they came and took clothes home. Why? Where are you now? Anybody know? Where are you?
Port Royal.
This is Port Royal Island, but specifically this campus. Where are you? Somebody said Beaufort and somebody said Technical College and Low Country. All y'all wrong. At least you got to be. The rest of y'all are flunk. This is Mather School campus. Oh yeah, now the oh yeah. Oh, you done flunked the course. Ain't no need to know the answer now. Take them over. Go register over. Now, Mather School, which was founded by the AMA. What was the AMA? Y'all wrong again. American Missionary Association. AMA founded Mather School and founded Dorchester Academy, and Penn, as y'all know, and St. Helena were all missionary schools. Mather School differed from Penn because Mather School is all girls, and they had women instructors, where in Penn School, boys and girls could go there. But the thing about these missionary schools was they intentionally wanted to change the harmony of the culture of Gullah Geechee people, because it was to the word y'all kept using a minute ago when I said AMA, African. They wanted it to become anglicized. They thought that they were doing what was called the Port Royal experiment, and that was to, let's say, assimilate these people into good members of society. That's how they would write it. All right? And so they thought that the only way to be a good and productive member of society was to now annihilate all forms of African tradition and culture from the lifestyle. Mainly because they didn't understand any of the African tradition, language, or culture. That's all it was. It was eliminate other. That's all it was. It had nothing to do with there being anything wrong with the language or the traditions of Gullah people. But it had everything to do with those who were coming in not having any understanding or appreciation for it. So at all of these campuses, when our folks came over and the missionaries gave out things like clothing and shoes and all that, families needed these things, so they came and they got them and they went back home with them. They paid minimal amounts, like whole sacks of clothes was what, 25 cents? For a whole sack of clothes. I know y'all parents say, I wish I could go shopping right now and get a whole sack and pay 25 cents. Not buy the item, buy the sack. So how much you stuff in there? 25 cents. And when you got 16 children at a time, yeah, you need several sacks. Okay? So when people would come here and get these things, and then they could go home with it. And then share it out, pass it around for all the kids. And then if their children had some other stuff and somebody else had other smaller, younger children, they passed that on to them. There was no such thing that you throw them in the trash. And so by the same token, they didn't throw in the trash their language, their traditions, their songs, their heritage, their culture. Because that was the harmony that helped us sustain ourselves. That was the harmony that kept us strong, kept strength in our communities, strength in our hearts, strength in our bodies. So that's why now, you can go to St. Helena right behind me. Plenty of people know how to talk about any. But y'all, if you broke out in a song, they can start singing with you. I go on plenty places and I figure people that join me. If I start singing, in our great getting up morning, fare you well, in our